Welcome to Backstage with Becca B, with special guest Jordan Kai Burnett. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On this episode, I'm talking with someone who's done a ton of LA theater. She's done Romeo and Juliet Love is a Battlefield musical. She's done Romy and Michelle High School Reunion musical. She's done Rocky Horror Productions. She's done Scissorhands musical. She's done Found the musical, and much more. Please welcome Jordan Kai Burnett.
How are you, dude?
Yeah, how have you
been? Holding in, holding out, holding up.
Yeah, living the quarantine life, trying to adjust still.
Yeah, trying to figure out like what life looks like now.
Yeah, it's like, who knows? Because I felt like back in March, we all thought that this was going to be over by like May.
Hey, oh yeah. In March, because my boyfriend hosts a show out here in Vegas, they were telling him like, oh, tickets are going back on sale May 11th. And we're all like, yeah, great. We're all going back to work. See you in August. Like at the latest, we'll be back to work by July, by 4th of July.
Yeah.
Boy, were we wrong.
Now we're like, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? July of next year, maybe. We'll see.
July, yeah, I want to be optimistic and say January.
Of course. I want to be optimistic too. And I believe that like, I have two fields of thought on it, which are like, one is that the optimism is so great and we have to stay optimistic. I think that's really important. But at the same time, there's like a little bit of me that just has to sort of let go and say like, when it happens, it happens. And, and digging out the ideas of like when the dates are going to come around is so unhelpful for me. Being like, maybe it'll be January, maybe it'll be March. I'm like, I just got to live my life and hope for the best and try not to panic all the time.
Yeah, it gets depressing if you panic all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you were doing a show that got cut short.
Yes, I was doing a show that got cut short. And what is fascinating is we had this like big fundraiser the night, I call it like it was like what we now joke as the closing night party, but it was 2 nights before the second to last weekend of the show. We had this big fundraiser. We're all drinking and partying and raising money for this amazing, for I Am a Theater Company. Like it was crazy. And then the next morning I had a couple of things lined up in New York that were canceled. They called, they said, Found is going to be canceled this weekend. So my thinking, I think because we didn't really understand at that point, it was like, okay, well, Found will be canceled this weekend, which means that we'll be able to go by next weekend. And then by Saturday, the world was what it was. So
yeah, it happened so quick.
I just got in the mail, because the mail's been crazy. I just got the closing night gifts that I ordered like end of February. They just came in the mail. And so I'm sending them out to the cast being like, happy closing. I guess we're closed.
I would be so down for it to come back like virtually or something though.
I mean, I think that show is the kind of show that's gonna really thrive. Like when
for sure.
The world reopens, for a lot of reasons. Like it's a small show. It's a show about like making your dreams come true and doing what you love. It's the kind of really palatable thing I think that people are going to want. And it's going to be more easy to produce than like a bigger show, which yes, of course, I hope the big shows come back too. But I think like when it all starts back up, smaller shows like that, I think they're going to have a time to shine that they haven't done in a long time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm going to get back to Found a little later.
Okay, great.
But I wanted to start off with, when did you know that you wanted to become a performer? And I mean, have you always known, or?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds weird to say that, but I was like a weird kid who would do like one-person versions of Les Mis in my parents' living room when I was like 4 or 5, and I had like a trench coat and a hat, and that was Eponine, and then I used the trench coat as a blanket, and that's when I was Fantine. I mean, I did, and I would like play Dying on the Barricade, and I think that for me, like instead of playing house or other stuff, that's what I did. I did like, not 30 seconds. They went on for days, versions of musicals by myself when I was little. And I was like always in dance class. And, once I was kind of old enough to be in a kids acting class, I was doing that. All those amazing programs that exist for children that are not like serious acting classes, but they're the kind of classes that nurture children who want to do something like this, a great place to put your energy. So I think there was never a time in my life that this was ever a question. I always wanted it, even when I didn't understand that it's what I wanted.
Were you like performing for your parents? Did they get to see these like day long days long shows?
And I was like always doing shtick. Like my dad, because I'm of a certain age of like people with tape recorders. Like we had tape recorders in my house all the time. So when I was little, my dad would tape record. Sometimes he would videotape it. But most of the time he would audio tape stuff that I would do. And one day I told him, I was like, I want you to know, I must have been 3 or 4. I said, I learned Spanish today. Now I know how to speak Spanish. And my dad was like, okay, go ahead. And I gave my dad a full Spanish lesson. It's not at all Spanish. It's just not. But I was very confident, like, guess what? I'm going to teach you Spanish. Like,
you tried.
I did. I mean, I found I was really good at entertaining myself.
You got started at like that improv scene.
Yeah, the improv scene in my parents' house around in like the early 90s was very popular. Very, very popular.
Love it so much. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first theater show you ever saw as an audience member?
You know, I do. The first to be honest, I'm actually not sure if it was the very first Broadway show, but when I was about 4 or 5, I got to see Les Mis. And there's this joke in my family that I went to see Les Mis and I sat there like this, because I'd been listening to the cast album. We had the double cassette tape and I was listening to it all the time. So the whole thing, and then a week later, someone in my family took me to see Cats and I fell asleep halfway through. But I was like riveted for 4 hours of Les Mis, but then like an hour and a half of the Jellicle Ball, and I was like, we're done here. Which I think still like really dictates who I am as a person.
But low-key, the Cats would have terrified me as a child.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a really high, like it's a very heady concept. When you start to think about it, you're like, these are cats, but they're people, but we're looking into their lives. It's very weird. It always surprises me that this is a very big tangent, but I always think about like, how did Cats become a really popular musical? Like I think about Cats and I'm like, it should have been some like weird off-Broadway fringy musical that lived, not written by Andrew Lloyd Webber, done by like a weird theater company in the 80s. That to me sounds like a musical about cats. But there we go.
Yeah, but then Memory is so good, so it's like.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, it has hits, it has bops.
Yeah,
it definitely has bops.
Exactly. So, when did you move to LA, and what inspired you?
Well, I went to school in Boston.
Okay.
And home for me, like home from Boston, was New York. So I went on tour. I like worked in a couple of theaters in Boston. I went on tour in like within that year. And then within 2 years of graduating from college, I was a musical theater major. Everything I did was revolved around musical theater. I produced a radio show that was a musical theater radio show. I was the president and the vice president at one point, different years of the Musical Theater Society at my school. I mean, it was my whole life. Like everything I did was musical theater. And I was kind of a nightmare because I loved it so much, but you know, you get older and you learn. But in 2010, I kind of had this shift of like, what would it be like to focus more on comedy, which is something that I had been doing in musical theater, but never really attacked, like, cause I didn't have time because I was doing other stuff. And so that's kind of why I moved to LA. It was like, I had never lived far away from home. I'd never been in the uncomfortable zone. Like I was always auditioning for musicals, doing musicals. Like I was living in a world that I knew. And I think I just sort of got this idea in my head. And my boyfriend at the time was like, I want to move to LA. And I was like, cool, I want to move to LA. And so we picked up and like 6 weeks later we moved.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of wild when you think about like being as young as I was and doing it, because it could have really gone poorly. But it took me some time to get used to it because I'm such an East Coaster, and like LA has has absolutely become a second home, but it took some real getting used to. Like it didn't fit naturally at first because it wasn't the world I was, that I knew. Yeah.
And you got involved in theater in LA too. So like what's the biggest difference between the theater scene in New York and the East Coast in general in
Oh,
LA? I know it's
it's,
a huge difference.
it's so different. I mean, it's apples and oranges, there is incredible theater in Los Angeles. But the way that the film and TV industry sort of dictates LA is the way that the theater industry dictates New York, kind of,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like 100% that that's true, but I would say more or less that's kind of how it is. But there's incredible theater in LA. And I think, I don't know, the biggest difference is there's more of it in New York, I'm not even sure I agree with myself there, but I think the quantity of it is different. There's a lot more opportunities to go get a job. There's a lot more opportunities to be auditioning. I spent a lot of time in LA in my car, like having therapy sessions with myself, driving to my one audition and driving to my next audition. But all of that time in between doesn't exist in New York. In New York, like you get up in the morning and then the next thing you know, you're hitting your pillow at night. Like there's no time to think about the stuff. I think that's the biggest thing for me. That's like the main difference between LA and New York is that the pulse of the city.
Constantly moving thing.
Oh yeah, big time.
And people in a rush everywhere.
Yeah, and I think even less of a rush, but people have a real place to go in New York. And in LA, you have a place to go, but there's like only kind of one way you're going. You're like going the 405 or you're going the one like, and then you're on that road and you're stuck on that road. In New York, you can be on your feet, you can be on the subway. There's just a different pace to it.
So the LA theater community, at least the one that like we know kind of, is super like tight knit. How did you get involved with that?
That's a good question. I auditioned for this show for this theater that will remain nameless. And I had a terrible experience. And it was the first show that I did. I had maybe been in LA no, that's not true. I'm lying to you. I did one show that was great. And then I did a musical that was a nightmare. But, it was horrible. Oh my God. It was, anyway, it doesn't matter. It was terrible. But I think I met somebody there who connected me with someone at a place that used to be called ANMT, the Academy for New Musical Theater, and it's now I think called NMI. I think that the name has officially changed probably a long time ago, and that was a really amazing place for me to sort of get involved because they were constantly producing shows like alongside Celebration or they were renting their space out for auditions. So it was kind of a great place to meet people. And I think, really, ANMT is where I booked like my first really big theater gig in LA, which was at the Rubicon in Ventura. And the auditions were at that place. And it was a place where I was spending all my time. And then I had this audition there and I knew about the audition because of that, I think. So that was kind of how it all started. And then the ball started rolling. I got lucky enough I made friends with the lovely people at For the Record when they were at Rockwell. And I produced my own solo show at Rockwell. And so Rockwell sort of became my home away from home. And then there were a lot of other jobs in between there, in between sort of For the Record. And I was still flying home to New York to audition and do jobs there. Yeah, I will say, like, I would buy a ticket on JetBlue and then I would pay for one in miles and I'd buy a ticket. So I was just constantly like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm tired a lot, but
it's never stopping.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is I was building a momentum, in a very tight-knit community, in a group of people that when you're lucky enough to be a part of it, it's so special because it's sort of like, it's like a tight-knit community with a lot of really incredible professional people.
Yeah.
Sure. I guess after I'm trying to I'm thinking about my life, but I did a couple shows with Celebration and a couple shows at Rockwell, and I did American Idiot at La Mirada, which was like one of my favorite experiences. And I think it's just, there's a different vibe in LA of the people that are working. One is not better than the other. They are so different, There's no room to say like, which do you like better? pizza or donuts. They're both delicious. I want to eat both of them all the time, but they're just really different.
For sure. And I think the first show I saw you in, it might have been, it was either Rocky or Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, man. That was a really interesting time because it was like the Rockwell that I had come up with, like the people that were running Rockwell at the time, which is a place that I still love, and sort of the people that were coming in. It was like the dovetail time was like when we were still doing Rocky, but things were changing.
Yeah. And still still doing Rocky.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were still doing Rocky. I mean, this is like, we're looking at like 6, 5. I think I started doing the Rocky Horror Show there 7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So this would have been, this would have been like, could have been 6, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then the Romeo and Juliet show, which Love is a Battlefield is what it was called then at Rockwell, kind of like it changed it. To say it changed my life sounds really silly, but sometimes you do a show and you meet people and those people become your family, and that show then inevitably changes your life. And that show absolutely did that for me.
I was gonna say it's gotten so many like different adaptations since, and it's still constantly evolving, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely still evolving. That show sort of has like rests now sort of in its own little peaceful place. And there's like a very different version of that show that will someday see the light. That's really exciting, but is not the same show. You know, I have to say that. It's very, very but it is like so exciting, and it's, you know, sprouts from the roots of what that was.
What do you think made Romeo and Juliet so special when it was at Rockwell and then it ventured on to Prospect a couple years later?
I think it was one of those like right people, right time. Like it was sort of this weird lightning in a bottle. A lot of us didn't know each other. Most of us didn't know each other. I think in that cast before the show started, I maybe knew one or two people, because I think I knew Julie Garnier, and I knew Nikki Claspel peripherally. We were kind of friends, and subsequently she's now like my best friend, and so it was. I think it was just. It felt, I think, a lot like a new breath in that room. Space was used differently. It was different people on the creative team. It was just, you know, it was like, let's use the space in a different way with different people. And I think there was just something about the idea of the show and the people involved that made it like really, really special.
Yeah, it made it special for the audience to watch too, because we watched like we could tell how close everyone was while watching.
Oh yeah, it was so weird. I mean, that's the thing about theater, right? Is like, it's hard to explain to non-theater people how close you get as a cast, how like weird the connection is when you're building a show, particularly when you're creating a new show.
Yeah,
there's something about watching other people create it. And I remember being in that room and watching the original Romeo, so it would have been Rustin and Ashley singing We Live for Love the first time, and I was like, oh, this is not, I didn't know this was gonna be like this is special. Like I felt it, and I was in a rehearsal.
Yeah, it's so special. So how do you remember like how exactly you got involved in it and auditioned for it?
I really do. I have the artistic director of Rockwell at the time was a good friend of mine for 100 years from New York. And this is like any story that starts like this, it sounds so dumb, but I had gone through a breakup, and I was living in my friend's office in her house, and I was like sitting and I was sulking and I was like being really stupid. And the artistic director called me and she was like, okay, you have to come down to Rockwell right now. I need you to like sing for this show. And I was like, I can't, I'm sad. I'm too sad. And she was like, get out of your house and come down here right now. And I was like, okay. And I went down and I walked into a room, and Bradley Bredewig was sitting in there, and that is like one of those moments that changed my life. Bradley is hands down one of the best friends and mentors I've ever had. That if it was such a dynamic energy in the room too, like just like good, fun people, excited to be there. That feeling that I think kind of we all miss right now is that sort of like,
Yes.
you know, and no nerves, no BS, just like good energy. And so, yeah, it got me off the couch, and then here we are.
Here we are talking about Romeo and Juliet. And
Romeo and Juliet. And I think I was like going through a lot. I was definitely going through a lot. I was going through like a big transition, and I was really into this idea that my character had this like cool hair thing, and I'd always wanted to shave my head, and so I was like, screw it, and I shaved my head. And so the show like really got into me. Like I was living it in my day-to-day life, you know. There was something about like her power, and she was so cool, and I was like, I can be cool. And I did. I had my head shaved forever. It's so funny now that I look at it. Sometimes it still feels like the ghost of my former baby side head.
I mean, I think the way you got into it made it that much more enjoyable to watch on stage.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved it. I loved every incarnation of it. I still do.
So then you also participated in Romeo and Michelle.
Oh yeah, that's like that was amazing.
It was like the next year? Was that the next year?
No, it was the same year. So 2015.
Same year. Okay.
Because in 2015, because I was sort of back spending time at Rockwell, doing stuff at Rockwell, a friend of mine put me in touch with the director because they were looking very specifically for this concert. It was just a workshop concert of Romeo and Michelle the musical. It's now called Romeo and Michelle the musical. It used to be called Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion the musical, but they shortened.
There's a lot to say.
A lot, yeah. And I grew up with that movie, and I always had this dream. Like I had these weird dreams. There's these 3 movies that I dream about turning into musicals, and Romeo and Michelle was one of them. Just I had this like little dream in my head, and they were looking for the Janine Garofalo part, and so I got an email from the woman who, I mean, sometimes I'm like, this is cool, but I got an email from the woman who wrote the movie, Robin, and she was like, hey, do you think you could come over and just read some scenes at my house? And I was like, at your house? Yeah, sure. So I drove to her house in the hills and read some scenes, and she said, yeah, I think this will be great. And I said,
what?
Like, do you want to hear me sing? She's like, no, it's okay. And the director was like, no, I looked you up on YouTube. It's fine. Which to me is always amazing because I'm like, what did you see? Like, what of my dumb thing that's still online that shouldn't be online anymore exists? And yeah, we did 3 workshops that summer. And then we did one in New York the following spring. And then the following fall, we did another. And then we did our out of town in Seattle in 2017. And it was amazing. And the show's still alive. I did a workshop of it in February. I got to do it on my birthday. It was the best. Like I hadn't sung that music in forever. And on my birthday, we had a workshop in LA. And in fact, we had another workshop planned the week that everything shut down. So I fly to New York and do that. And, you know, it'll come back. It'll all come back. It's heartbreaking to think about it not. So it can't happen. It's like we talked about before. It just gotta be positive.
But it's got to be amazing knowing you're a part of so many shows that are still evolving and have bright futures ahead.
You know, I think I've always loved being on the entry level of a show. I think it's always really interesting to be in a place where you can really truly workshopping stuff with the writers and the director. And I think it gives opportunity to learn so much about, like, it's a nerdy thing to say, but you learn so much about the structure of how musicals really work. And then on the other side, you learn so much about like what fits. And something like Romeo and Michelle, or even the Romeo and Juliet show, to be there early and sort of see things that you offered or workshopped still live in the script is so, it's never not cool.
And going backwards a sec, Pat Benatar got involved with Romeo and Juliet too.
So there is now something called the Romeo and Juliet Project, which is written by Bradley Bradaway, who created the original, and the music is by Pat and her husband Spider. It's all of their great songs. And it is the story of Romeo and Juliet. It's very different. It is not the same show. But yeah, I'm very lucky that up until, you know, COVID, I was able to do all of the productions of it or workshops of it. We did one exactly a year ago yesterday in the Hamptons. We did this big concert, outdoor concert. And it's the same thing. It's just amazing to feel connected to something that you feel like, oh, I didn't write this show, certainly by no means did I, but like to have a little part of your heart that like lives in it is never not cool.
I think I saw the 1 year ago anniversary post just before this interview, like 2 minutes before. I was like, oh, that's so awesome that it was
really cool. I mean, you know, you share a story that you love with people for the first time. It's every time somebody's like, oh, I've never thought of that. You're like, yeah, it's cool, right?
Has Pat said anything to you that really like resonates with you that you remember?
Yeah, Pat is like the greatest person I've ever met in my life. And I'm a little like rock and roll baby. Like the other part of my life, I have a band in New York, and I'm really a nerd for like female rock musicians particularly. So my life growing up, like Pat was always an icon of mine. And she believes in herself, and she believes in other people, and she believes in the people she believes in so much. And like, this is silly, but when we were doing the show in the Hamptons, my band released their EP the night before we left to go to the Hamptons. We had this big party in New York, and Pat like came up to me before I headed off to the party, to the EP release concert, because I had like a big concert, big rock concert, and she was like, be careful, we need this. Okay. Like Pat Benatar just told me to sing safely. Like, what is my life? It's so silly, but I will never forget it. And every time I get on stage and I sing with my band, I'm like, be careful. Be careful. Pat needs this. What does that mean? But in my head, it feels like special.
Are you still working on band stuff like right now?
Yeah, I mean, you know, everything is hard right now.
Yeah.
To do. A year ago we released our EP, and then we played a few really amazing shows in New York after, like, quite a few between August and we had one lined up for the end of March, or for the end of April. We had one lined up in New York, and obviously things are canceled. It's a little harder because the guys in my band are in New York and I'm right now in Las Vegas. So, excuse me, when things were going, I would fly home from either LA or Vegas home to New York for 36 hours for a rehearsal and a show. We would just like bang it out, go in, guys are ready, I sing, we go through it, and we go do a show.
And what's your band called for people who don't know?
Stop Thrust.
Okay.
Which is a fencing term. A lot of people think it's naughty. It might be, but it's also a fencing term. It's like a fencing thing, and we thought it sounded cool, and blah, blah, blah. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it means it's like, and if there's fencers out there watching this, I'm sorry because I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically like when you let somebody else's move be the thing that ruins them. And so we sing about relationships a lot, and it seemed fitting, like, you know, rock and roll.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's harder because I can't be there right now because I'm not going to fly every week to go back. But yeah, I mean, we're always working on stuff. We're always, and particularly now it's difficult because we love to play live. Like, we love recording music. It's fun. But for us, like, playing live is the best part. And so that obviously has to be on pause for a little while.
It's kind of like performing in theater is something you obviously probably miss too.
Yeah,
a lot.
Big
want to get back to.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking again of theater, you've also recently done 2 versions of Scissorhands now at Rockwell. How was that, and when did Bradley ask you to be involved with that?
So in 2018, this story is sort of like the story of the last 2 years of my life, basically. But in 2018, Bradley called me and he said, "Look, I'm gonna do this show, and I'd love for you to come out and do it." Because that's another thing I've always I love that movie. I've been Edward Scissorhands for Halloween before because my hair is already prepared for it. Like, I just show up. I'm like, here I am, I'm weird. But Bradley asked me, he said, come out to LA, like spend the holidays. When it's difficult as you get older because sometimes you don't get to spend the holidays like at home. But again, like Bradley's a dear friend of mine. It made great sense. It was like, yeah, I'll spend Christmas in LA. And I actually hadn't been really in LA in like 2 years. So I kind of came back to LA and it felt like, ooh, LA, I forgot you. And we did this run I was supposed to be in LA from the week or two before Thanksgiving until New Year's, basically. And we didn't end up closing the show until St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I got
I went back to New York for like 2 or 3 weeks in the middle, like somewhere around there. But while I was in New York, I also booked this job that I've been doing in Las Vegas, Magic Mike Live. So I was supposed to leave New York in November of 2018 and be back in January of 2019. And I've basically been gone since November of 2018. Like, oops. Because then when Magic Mike went on hiatus, Scissorhands came back. So it's sort of like my year started with Scissorhands, and then I did Magic Mike, and then my year ended with Scissorhands, which it's such a special show. And again, it's sort of like that Romeo and Juliet thing. Again, it's such a testament to people in the room. But when you have great people in the room and you have a beautiful story like that, and you have I'll say bravery that Bradley does to say, like, well, what if it's not the same story? What if it's a little different? Like, what if we see it through the eyes of somebody in the way we've never seen it before? I think it landed with a lot of people, and it sort of was our little Christmas show that chugged along until St. Patrick's Day.
It's so good, so brilliant. And I've never seen the movie, but like it's something.
Really?
I've never seen it.
You don't want to see it?
I don't know. I'm scared to.
It's so different. I mean, it's really different. It's so worth watching. That's what I've heard. Film. It's such a beautiful film. But it has the same heart and also the same camp and silliness that the show does. I think that's what like Bradley really made sing about the show is like it never felt too serious or too comedic. It always sort of rode that line of a little of both. So for people who haven't seen the movie like myself, what were like the main differences between the musical and the film? Oh, well, there's some plot things that are different, like storyline stuff, but the biggest difference is that like I'm not Johnny Depp. There's this idea that this inventor builds this child, and in the movie, yes, builds a son played by Johnny Depp, but I think Bradley is very right in saying like if you build a child, you build a child.
Yes.
Like it's about the love of a parent to a child, and I think that taking that idea and saying like this character has always been someone that all types of people who like I felt like a weirdo sometimes, and I could feel like Edward Scissorhands. I think anybody that ever felt a little bit out of place understood that movie. And I think putting the twist on it and having somebody play the part that's not the person you expect, I think is nice for storytelling.
I also think the Christmas movie, the Christmas music, just like ties in so beautifully.
The thing is it is sort of a Christmas movie, sort of like it all revolves around Christmas, but it's not a Christmas movie like a Christmas movie like banging you over the head with a Christmas tree. So I think leaning into it made it more special because we all have a little. Okay, I don't want to assume there is like a little tingle in your heart during Christmas time for most people. Yeah. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, it's just that idea of like joy and happiness and twinkly lights and
snow.
Snow. I still find it. We use these paper pieces and fans to make snow around the house. And I'll tell you, if you think I still find it in my bathroom, you're absolutely right.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we take 9 months later, and I'll send a photo to Bradley, and I'll be like, how did this get caught inside? Why is there in my car all the time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I worked frozen at Pantages, so I understand that. Because at the end, all the snow falls on you.
And you're going to find it forever. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and then you have to go through the audience, like, at the end and make sure no one's on their camera and stuff.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So you just get snowed on.
Yes. I didn't see it at the Pantages. I had hoped to see it at the Pantages. Actually, I went with Bradley, and we bought tickets for the wrong night. We showed up and we were like, Frozen! And they were like, your tickets were for last night. And we were like, dinner.
Oh no.
It was a bummer. But it's okay. We saw it in New York. It was beautiful,
Yeah, it's the same experience, but it's like a smaller theater in New York, I think. So
Is it?
I think
I
it's a
have
little more intimate.
how big the Pantages is. I've been a bunch of times, but I
Yeah.
should know that, but I don't.
And then most recently I've gotten to see you in Found,
Oh,
obviously, which was I was obsessed with, honestly.
the show itself is like really special.
Yes.
Like the show started in a few years ago. They did They did a production. They did two productions, like one in New York City and one at one of the theater festivals. I can't remember where at the moment. And then they did it in Philly. And then when they brought it out here, Moritz von Stupenagel, who has the best name ever and is kind of my hero, he's a legend. Like I think he's a genius. But he said, like, if we're gonna do this show again, let's change it, work it. So it didn't feel like a show. It felt like the first time anyone had done the show because we were working stuff all the time, all the way up until opening night. We were changing stuff. But I think the premise of the show is about the creation of this real magazine called Found, which is about things you find on the ground anywhere, and it just sort of magically comes together, and it has this sort of SNL element of sketch comedy that pops into the narrative of the musical, of the actual like storytelling of the musical. And I think it's just so different. And in rehearsals, we would all find ourselves watching the show, just crying, laughing, just the dumbest stuff, just laughing, like still. And the same thing with that feeling of closeness, like that group, we got really close. We all were really fond of each other. We still text all the time.
And it was such a cool little theater environment there too. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's something really fun about reimagining a space. Like we walked in there and I was like, okay, it's a black box. All right. But then by the time things were all built and there were twinkly lights and I felt like a bar, it really breathes life into it in a way that I think sometimes you can't get in necessarily a proscenium stage. Being in a space, it's not immersive. I don't think immersive is the right word. It's just different stages. It's just around you. And I think it's a really fun way to tell a story.
And honestly, I came like the first time I think I saw it twice and I wanted to see it more than that.
Me too.
But I came the first time because I knew people who were in it and I was like, I wanted to see them on stage.
Of course.
So yeah, I wanted to see you all on stage and I didn't even expect to get to love the musical as much as I did.
I know the music is really special. I mean, the guy, I don't know if you've watched the John Mulaney Sack Lunch Bunch. Have you watched?
I haven't, but I know what you're talking about.
The guy who wrote the music for that wrote the music for Found.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like so smart and cool, and there's something, like being in the process of a show that's had legs, and then you kind of are given the opportunity to rework things is just like, it's the coolest. And that show, I could do that show forever. Like I loved doing that show. I loved showing up to work. I loved being with those people, singing those songs.
And I feel like I kind of heard you sing different songs than I've ever had before in that show.
Oh, for sure. I think that show
showed off your voice.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I think when I look back at that show for like the rest of my life, it kind of felt like a culmination of a lot of things, like my personal life being as it was, and then my career being kind of as it was, and all of it coming together at once. That show felt really special, and it felt, for me, it felt like a culmination of a lot of hard work in a lot of different parts of my life. So I'll always hold it really, really dear because I feel like it gave me the opportunity, like you said, to do stuff that people hadn't seen me do before.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And so what's on your current theater bucket list for after theater can come back?
Okay, well, Found 2.0.
Yes.
Romeo Michelle.
Yes.
The Romeo and Juliet project with Pat Benatar. Okay, those are my first three. Those are the most important because they're real. And do you just mean like dream roll bucket list or like?
I have dream roll and bucket list in different questions. Okay. But we can combine the two and say bucket list and then dream roll.
Well, I think theater bucket list is like I think right now more than anything, I just want to be able to go back to work. Like when I really think about it, so much of, I think I have worked really hard to build a certain thing, which is like filled with a lot of different parts. It's filled with musical theater. It's filled with comedy. It's filled with a lot of people telling me I couldn't do everything and me saying like, I'm actually gonna bye. And so to look at all that hard work and then push a really big pause button on it is difficult. And I think for me, I just want to be able to like jump back in. Like my bucket list is like, I just want to be able to jump back in, you know, paying my bills, doing what I love has always just been my dream. Just like being able to do what I love. That's it. So it feels far away to say like, just to do that again. But to be honest with you, that's like my bucket list right now is like jumping right back in. Like, let's go, let's pick up where we left off and then some.
And it sounds like you go at a very fast pace normally because like you talk about traveling like to this place, that place.
Oh yeah. I would rather be tired than bored all the time.
I agree.
You know, like I'd rather, and I do think that there's something to be said about like working really hard and being tired and also giving yourself a break.
Yeah.
And like a breather. And I think this time has been too much of a breather, but it's been a good way to sort of be like, okay, so what does my life look like without my work? Because it's important to check on that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, what does the rest of your life that is not just your work look like?
For sure.
You know, so it's not the break I planned on. I'm trying to make the best of it, you know?
I don't think it's the break any of us planned on.
That's real.
We're like, I don't want a virus, thanks.
No, I thought it was going to be like robots. You know, I would have believed like robots or aliens before I would have believed a pandemic.
Aliens. Yes. My sister keeps telling me there's like really aliens that they spotted. I'm like, what? Don't scare me.
Oh boy.
I'm like, don't scare me. What's your dream role now?
That was such a hard question. It's hard because I'm such a nerd, you know, like at the end of the day, like when you cut it all down, like I pretend to be like a lot of really cool things, but mostly what I am is like a theater nerd. So I would say there's like 3 shows I've always wanted to do. I want to play Audrey in Little Shop. I want to play Sally Bowles in Cabaret. And I'm just out of my mind. Must really not be a dream. I would say like those 2 are very high on the list. I mean, I'm also like a nerd for old shows, so the Judy Holliday part in Bells Are Ringing has always been on my list. I don't know if you know that show, but I don't
think I do.
I would implore you to learn about it. I think it's like 64, 68. It's about a woman who runs a phone operator. She's a phone operator.
Okay, wait, what's it called again?
Bells Are Ringing.
Bells Are Ringing. Okay.
And it's just great. She gets to play a million different parts. And for me, that's always the thing is like, you know, how much can I like mine out of this thing? So, yeah, I would say like off the top of my head, I want to do the new version of Hedwig that they release. Like I'm dying to play Itzhak in that version. And then, but at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, somebody do Cabaret. Let's go. I want to do it forever.
Yes.
You know, like that to me, again, she's like another character who she gets to do a million things. Like she's one person, but she's a million people.
What would be awesome is if they brought Cabaret back to, wasn't it a Celebration? And Alex was in it, and if Alex and you could both be in it.
That's our dream. Actually, I heard he was sensational in that show. Unfortunately, I was in New York when he was doing it, but he's a very good friend of mine, and we sort of have joked around about doing that show together in our dreams.
Yes. I'd be down. I would love to see all.
There's so many amazing shows out there that have existed for a long time. I mean, you know, something like Cabaret, something like Bells Are Ringing, Little Shop, whatever. But for me, like, I think at the end of the day, like the things I'm passionate about are these shows that I've been a part of since the jump. Like, not found necessarily, but since the jump of that production and Romeo Juliet and Romeo and Michelle, that's my dream. It's like, give those shows life.
Yeah, it's special.
Yeah.
It's special, and you get to originate something.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing. Being a part of that process and then going on with it is just the best.
Yes. If you could turn any movie into a musical, what would it be?
Okay, other than Romeo Michelle and Edward Scissorhands? Uh,
Yes.
mm, well, I'm going to say this, but nobody's allowed to steal it unless they're going to put me in it. So if you hear this and you want to write this musical, let me know. But my other dream is have you ever seen the movie Moonstruck with Cher?
No.
For tonight, you got to watch it. It's a fairy tale. It's a love story about New York, and to New York. And I want to play the Cher part in the musical of Moonstruck.
Oh,
That's my dream.
yes. Let's make it happen.
Yep, she's hair just like mine. Well, her hair's better than mine, but she doesn't.
Someone watching this, make it happen.
Yeah, somebody do it. Let's do it. Come on.
Yes, right now. So besides the people we've already mentioned, who else do you look up to in the entertainment industry or theater industry?
What a good question. Oh, that's a nice question. Yeah, I mean, like, clearly, I'll start with Bradley because he's a great place to start, even though I've talked about him. He's one of my absolute best friends, but he's also such a creative and bleeding heart. Like, he's just so full of love and so bold. And I admire him so much. Who do I admire? Oh, I mean, this sounds silly because she's my writing partner, but my writing partner or comedy partner is a woman named Daisy Egan, who is the youngest female to ever win a Tony Award for Secret Garden. And like when I was a kid, that was another show. I used to play Secret Garden in my living room when Les Mis was, like, it was in rep. So sometimes it was Les Mis, sometimes it was Secret Garden.
Oh,
and
so
10-ish years ago, a little less than 10 years ago. And I fangirled out on her a little bit and made some really bad Secret Garden jokes. But I just think I am very inspired by her. I think that she's the only one of her kind. She's the only person who did what she did and then has continued on to be like this remarkably talented and wildly funny human being, an excellent mom. And I think a lot of the people that I think, I have a lot of names rolling in my head, a lot of people that I look up to. But I think that people that I really look up to are people that have found a way to like have it all, which is like not a real thing. Like having it all doesn't make sense because everybody wants different stuff.
Yeah.
But I think when I look up to people who are able to find a balance between like really being obsessed with what they love and giving their whole heart to it, and then also having other stuff they love, other passions, people that they love, being able to do all of those things to me is inspiring, on all sorts of levels.
Is there any way that you specifically work on being the hard worker you are in theater and then like taking time for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very conscious that I'm not great at it. I'm very conscious of it. But there are things that I love. Like I have other passions. Like I think between my career and that is theater and comedy and the band, that takes up a lot of my time. But I also have a dog, and I love that dog. Like he's my baby son, and that having a responsibility to a creature gives you the moment to go like, you gotta take a breather. And also I love a lot of dumb stuff. Like I really like food. Like I really like learning about food and watching shows about food, and I hate cooking, but I love eating. And I think that it's sometimes nice to give yourself something to look forward to. Like, oh, I've been working really hard. I'm not going to reward myself with like this, but I'm going to reward myself with an experience. Like I'm going to take a night. Like we had been running Scissorhands like all through Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I had been home in Vegas to see my boyfriend like for 24 hours at a time for 3 months almost. We'd see each other for like a day, maybe 2. Okay, bye. And in a couple, like right after Found opened, we went out and had this like amazing dinner, and it was really special because it felt like I'm working really hard, but I'm going to take a second to turn my phone off and get out of my head and get out of my normal space. And I think that's important. There's other stuff, like I love what I do, but there's a whole world out there that I don't want to miss.
Yes. Going off of that, how do you work on self-confidence with being in the industry?
I think you just have to believe in yourself the most. You have to buy into your own stuff. Like, if you don't buy into it, nobody else is going to. So I think it sounds simple, and it sounds like, and I don't mean to say that there aren't a lot of times when I have huge amounts of self-doubt, because I'm an adult human in the world. But I think there's an element of the same way that I think you have to wake up every morning and choose joy. You have to choose it. You can't just like hope it's gonna come. You have to choose it. And I think it's the same thing. Like, I have to wake up and like bump myself, and I have to say like, okay, I have to believe in my own stuff. I gotta believe in myself as a human. I have to believe in myself as a talent. I have to believe in myself as a carer of dogs and drinker of coffee, whatever. Like I'm looking at this coffee. I keep thinking like, but I'm gonna wait. But I think like, yeah, you have to buy into your own stuff, even if it's a joke. Like, sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? This is the dumbest. What am I doing here? But for 3 whole minutes, when I walk into an audition, for example, I'm going to believe it. I am going to believe it more than anyone else. And then I can go and cry and like have a moment if I need to. But like, I can't expect anybody else to think I'm cool even a little bit if I don't believe it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to say that I don't have crippling self-doubt sometimes. A lot of the time, especially right now, when like I spend most of my life worrying about my work, and now I have not that to worry about. Like, how do you validate yourself? It's really complicated.
It's so hard right now.
It's so hard, and I have to be like, okay, you're still great. You're so great.
Yeah.
And even if I don't believe it, I have to believe it.
Talk.
You know, it's like that little girl standing in front of the mirror, and she's like, yeah. You know, I don't know. There was like some video, but
yes.
I feel like there's a huge element of that, which is just like, believe in yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. No one. No, you can think that, like, for a long time I was like, I'm going to fall in love someday, and then I'm going to believe in myself because I'll be in love. It's like, no. You're not going to fall in love until you love yourself. Like, and that's really true. Like, it seems so silly and cliche, but like, nobody's going to believe your BS until you believe it.
Yes, true. It takes a lot of work, but I feel like people don't realize other people are going through that at the same time.
That's exactly right. Oh yeah, it's like everybody's Instagram, right? Like, everybody is a walking Instagram account. Yeah. And you look at someone's life and you're like, oh, they have all the things I want, and it's like, no. Look at how effortless their life is, and it's like, oh, that person is crying themselves to sleep every night. That person has anxieties about this. We all have so much stuff, but like, even my anxieties, I have to believe in them. I just have to like believe in all of it, because otherwise they'll just eat me alive.
Yes.
You know?
Exactly.
There's, and I don't mean to sound like toxically positive, because I don't believe in that either. Like, I don't believe that it's just like, love yourself. I think it takes a lot of hard work. I think it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of like, you're doing okay. And it's work that every day I have to work on it. I have to work on it every single day. So it's never simple. It's never easy, but it's so important.
And a little more lighthearted questions before a couple more serious questions. What's the funniest thing that has ever happened to you on stage?
Oh, the funniest thing that's ever happened on stage. I'm trying to think about. Like, laughing on stage. I'm terrible. Like, I'll laugh all the time. So it's probably a bad question for me, because I'll be like, this one thing that wasn't that funny and I broke. Funniest. Oh, we have to come back to that one. Can we come back to it?
Yeah, for sure. What's your favorite 90s song?
90s?
Yeah.
Ooh.
This is hard for everyone. It's like the hardest question.
Listen, you can't put this on my gravestone. I'm not married to this. But the first answer that comes to my head right now, oh, I'm going to regret this. I'm really going to regret it. I have a terrible time making decisions. But this is the one I'm going to commit to right now, is Criminal, Fiona Apple.
Okay.
So stressful.
Okay. I won't put that on anything. No.
It's okay. Just like, if somebody asks you, be like, maybe it's different today. When I asked her, it was this. Yeah.
Now it's probably different. If you could revive any musical that currently isn't on Broadway, what would it be?
To see it?
Yeah, to see it.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh man, that's hard. Okay. My first instinct is to say, the original Chicago with Burnett and Cheetah Rivera.
Yes.
But also maybe Damn Yankees with Gwen Verdon.
Ooh.
Or maybe, I mean, like, I would go deep. Like, I want like, maybe the original company of On the Town, the original in 44, 45. Those would be the three I would think of immediately. Because I'd love to be in that house and like see that original cast and the original choreography.
Yeah. All good answers. See where it started.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that a lot right now because I think about how like our parents and our grandparents are, I don't know, I'm having a hard time with my parents sometimes explaining to them that like this is a pandemic and they need to take it seriously. But
yes.
I think the biggest difference between like what we're living through now and what everybody else has lived through is that in all of these other times of suffering in our country, specifically in America, I can't speak to anyone else, but great art has come of it because we've needed a place to congregate. We've needed a place to escape. And we don't get that because we're not allowed to leave our houses. So like the golden age of musical theater came out of World War II because of the need to escape what was happening. So those shows are the shows that right now, especially, I'm like, put me in a theater for 3.5 hours, give me a 60-piece orchestra. That's what I want, you know? Because that's the hardest thing is that we don't get to sit in a movie theater and go, I'm not gonna think about the pandemic for 2 hours. I'm gonna go sit in a theater. I'm gonna go sit and watch Frozen or whatever. We don't get that. We don't have that opportunity now. And I think that's the hardest part because the greatest art comes out of these kinds of times.
That escapism, yep. Something I miss. What's a fun fact or hidden talent that you have? Fun fact about you or hidden talent?
Fun fact or hidden talent. Well, I'm a puppeteer. That's a fun thing that I do.
That is a fun thing.
That's a fun thing that I do. I don't know if that's a hidden talent. Fun fact. I wish I had like really fun facts. I used to be a really big comic book nerd.
Ooh.
Yeah, like when I was like before I was like from when I was 11 to 15, 16 even, I was really into comic books. Like I was this musical theater kid who was really into rock music. So I would go to like my Fantastics rehearsal, and then after my Fantastics rehearsal, I would go to a concert of like a cool indie band, and then I'd go home and like sing musical theater and read comic books.
Your parents were like, okay, she's into some.
You're confused. And I was like, no.
That's fine.
Yeah, it kind of is exactly how I built my life. It's like, I do a million things. I like them all. Deal with it.
Yeah. Or travel to a million places for a million different things.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we were a million places. I mostly just travel like LA, New York, Vegas, LA, New York, Vegas, LA, New York, Vegas, but still incredible opportunity. I'm so grateful that I'm able to do it.
Well, the next question is, if you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
Right now? Out of my house? No. I'll be honest, my boyfriend is Australian, and we had a trip to Australia planned 2 weeks after the world closed. So I think instinctively my first answer should be Australia because I was supposed to go for the first time ever, but also probably Italy because like
yes.
or France because I just want to go be in a beautiful place and eat
the good food.
That's all I want to do. I just want to be in a beautiful place and be like,
yes. Yes, and cry with all the beautiful sights.
I can't wait. We talk about that a lot. We talk about like, where are we going to go when we can? Like, where are we going to go when my passport is no longer a napkin? You know, and so those are the places that are really high on the list. And Mexico City, I want to go there too.
Oh.
Never been. And there's like beautiful art and amazing food and apparently.
So what are you going to do first once quarantine ends?
Like that I can't do now?
That you can't do now?
I'm gonna have a big dance party with them.
Just invite everyone over for a dance party.
I want to like get a big space where we can all be together. I mean, of course, like I want to get a job. I want to go back to theater. Yes, of course, that is all implied. But if we're talking about something that is not that, I want to have like a big party where we all get lots of food and we do a lot of dancing and sweating on each other because we're allowed to do that again.
Wait, what food is being ordered for this?
My guess is like some food trucks, because probably food trucks are tougher now in COVID. So I'd say like food trucks of small businesses. If I'm planning this real party, it's like food trucks of small businesses. There's like a kickin' DJ and everybody I love in the same room, just being sweaty and dancing.
Yes. Okay, dream. So deep question. How do you think live theater will be different when it's able to come back?
Well, look, I think it's going to take some patience. I think it's going to take some real patience, because I think like the production of Godspell, I don't know if you've read about the production of Godspell that's happening right now. I have a friend in it, and she told me, she was like, I think this could really work. You know, it's just going to take patience on the part of everyone involved for people to change shows and to build new shows in a different way. And so I kind of think like when it first comes back, I hope there's going to be like a big surge of small shows that might not otherwise have had an opportunity. You know, shows that would be small shows off on Broadway, would be kind of big shows off Broadway. I think we'll have the opportunity to go to Broadway sooner, is my hope. I think it's going to be different in the sense that we're all going to take it to heart. Like, I think that all of us who have, I may be wrong, but when I think about it, I think I hope I never forget it. I hope I never, ever forget this feeling, because being on both sides, I cannot wait to walk into a theater and sit down and like the lights go out and you hear the overture start. I cannot wait. I feel like chilly bumps on my body.
It's gonna give me goosebumps.
You know, just that feeling of being around people. And I hope that everyone is really nice to each other when it happens. And then being on the other side of it, that feeling of like signing in when you walk in and hearing like, okay, half hour, like that kind of stuff. That was me as a stage manager. Like, like sometimes when you're doing it all the time, it's not that you don't love it, but you get tired. It's a job. So you get tired and you're like, oh, you know, I wish I was on my couch tonight. But I hope I never forget this feeling of waiting and this feeling of hope and desire about it coming sooner, and I can't wait to taste it. And I hope that I am able to just take care of it forever, because it's going to be a long time till things are normal, if they're ever really normal. Like
what's normal?
Yeah, what's normal? I have no idea. So I think there's something really beautiful about this idea that when we all go back, it'll be this like, I'm so grateful I get to do this again. I'm so glad I get a second act.
Yes. It'll be special. Hashtag only intermission.
That's right. I mean, I think everything is, we always say in our house, we say everything is pause. Nothing is canceled. Everything's pause. Yeah. But to have, I mean, how beautiful of an act two it will be for all of us to return to be spectators and performers doing what we love again on both sides. Like, what an exciting, beautiful time that will be.
The rush is going to be so exciting. I have chills thinking about it now.
You know, the rush, it's like, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to do like weird crying.
Yeah.
Like I can feel the lights going down and being, because when we watched Hamilton, and I'd seen it a couple of times, but my boyfriend had never seen it, and I had like a meltdown. Like I got really weird before it started, and he was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just need you to eat your ice cream a specific way so you like don't miss what's happening on the screen, okay? And he was like, I know how to eat ice cream. And I was like, well, you're going to miss it if you look at it. And I started, and he was like, okay.
He's like, are you sure you're okay?
Like, this is not about the ice cream. And I was like, you know, he's like, you miss what you love. And I was like, a lot. He's like, you miss your work. And I was like, so much. He's like, okay. Be okay? And I was like, yeah. Then we start it, and it says like June 16, the lights are coming down to the Richard Rodgers Theater. And I was like, we had to pause it again. He's like, you cried out. And I was like, oh, crying. And then But it was that I hadn't had that feeling of like in so long. It felt so special. I wanted to treat it with respect.
Yes. I miss it. Have you watched anything else on Broadway HD?
I watched all of the Harry Potter movies, like at the
Ooh.
very beginning. So then I wanted Asher, that's my boyfriend, to see the Broadway HD of Puffs, which is the 70-minute version of all the Harry Potter books as told through the eyes of the Hufflepuffs, which I saw at New World and is so terrific. But we started it, and I think it was a little difficult because it's so good live that it's hard to sit in your apartment, especially at the beginning of quarantine, before we were good at sitting in front of televisions again, and we were sort of like, So I haven't watched anything else. I feel like obligated to take this time to educate him and be like, we have to watch the Angela Lansbury Sweeney Child. We have to watch Into the Woods. We have to watch Sunday in the Park with George. And She Loves Me. And Holiday Inn. There's so many good, well-filmed things. We just haven't gotten around to it. But the truth is, we have time.
Yep. We have who knows how much time. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you like to promote that you've been working on, or that, like, have you been crafting or anything? I don't know.
No, I don't craft. We drove around the country. We found a way to be socially distant and wear our masks and be really safe. And we drove to Florida, which was crazy, but to be with my parents. We wanted to keep them safe. So we drove, and then we drove back around the outside of the country. That's sort of been my like quarantine thing that I did was we didn't deal with other people really. We saw a few friends socially distant, but mostly just us in a car. That was sort of our big quarantine thing. Our big
like a vacation.
Well, yeah. I mean, kind of. Everything was closed, and we did mostly like 90% to go. And then there were some cities where you could like in New York, we went into New York and we sat in the street because they have like tables up in the streets in Queens in my old neighborhood. And so we did that. And I mean, I would say it felt like a vacation because we were able to leave our house. And we live in a studio. So we have no doors to keep us. We have no like private time. So for us, it was just like something to like get out of the house and do something different, which felt really special. And to have the opportunity to do that was really not something we would ever get to do when we were working. So I'd say like that was sort of the biggest thing. Getting ready to leave Vegas. We're actually going to head back east to wait this out, be closer to friends, have a little bit more flexibility to like work with the band, be able to create closer proximity while still at 6 feet. And I think it'll be good just to have a change of pace, which is, I think it will be good for us.
Of course. So to keep up with anything you do the rest of quarantine, where can people follow you on social media?
You can find me at JKAIB. It's only 5 letters. It's me. I'm wearing shoes as a shirt. In my icon, please follow. It's a really good time. It's a lot of photos of my dog. Well, actually, right now it's not. Right now, I'm having a sort of, I'm redefining my relationship with social media right now. So a lot of it is about Black Lives Matter and voting and things that I think are important. And then also some of my dog. And then also my band at Stop Thrust.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the places.
We love dog pictures.
Oh, they're so. He's on a play date because he would have been loud.
Oh, yeah, my dog. I figured that out. I had her in like one interview. The lawnmowers came and she's like,
he'll lose his mind. If he hears one thing, he'll be like,
yeah, and you're like, you don't need to speak.
Doing an interview. He's like,
yeah, you're like, and well, thank you for coming on this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I love that I get to bring people in to talk about theater again.
I love it too. It makes me feel happy and it makes me feel hopeful. It's just a cause.
Yes. And I don't think there's any way for us to forget about theater ever in this
That's right.
Yeah. So, which is awesome.
Thank you so much, love.
Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.